The morning of January 16, 2006, in the upscale coastal neighborhood of Ponta Praia in Santos, Brazil, began as usual. 42-year-old Monica Temar closed the front door of her home. She was hurrying to work, a place she loved and cherished and to which she had recently returned after maternity leave. Monica was looking forward to a typical workday filled with familiar tasks and meetings with colleagues. She didn't yet know that her every move had been closely watched for several days from a nearby parked car. For the corporate world, her return was the natural order of things, but for one person, it became a personal tragedy. As Monica walked to her car, in the shadows of a nearby street, a hitman's finger was already on the trigger. She had only minutes left before leaving home would turn into a deadly trap designed in an unexpected place. Monica Temar Cruz de Almeida was born in 1963. Her family lived in the hub of the petrochemical industry, located in Cubatão, São Paulo, Brazil. From an early age, Monica was responsible and diligent. She excelled in her studies and maintained warm relationships with family and friends. Young Monica achieved significant academic success and, already in high school, dreamed of building a career that would allow her to live comfortably. There was no choice in career direction, as a complex of fuel and petroleum product manufacturing plants was located near her hometown. Monica planned to work at one of the plants, so she focused on pursuing higher education. After graduating from university, she completed an internship at one of the plants, hoping to gain a foothold. However, landing the position wasn't easy, as the work was prestigious and well paid. Many people wanted to work there. Monica knew that no one would willingly give up their position to her. But she was lucky when one of the employees retired and her position became available. During this same period, Monica began a romantic relationship that quickly developed into marriage. By the late 1980s, she was already married. Her husband, Asfaldo Rodriguez, met him shortly after landing a job at an oil company. Thus, she realized her dream. She had everything to be happy. She was well regarded at work. She was known as a professional, a reliable person who would not let people down and who handled all tasks perfectly. Gradually, she rose to a managerial position. Her career continued to advance, which pleased her greatly. In some ways, Monica could be called a careerist. She truly spent most of her time on her work. But those closest to her knew her from a different side. She was described not only as dedicated to her work, but also as a loving daughter, wife, and sister. Monica was calm and caring, always ready to help. She also dreamed of becoming a mother, but this presented challenges. Unfortunately, not everything in Monica's life was perfect. After turning 30, she began struggling with health issues. She was diagnosed with a disease that affected her bones and joints, causing severe pain. During periods of exacerbation, Monica experienced intense pain and suffering. Together with her loved ones, she tried to find a cure. Despite the efforts of doctors and regular visits to specialists, her health problems occasionally reached the point where she had difficulty simply getting to the bus and getting to work. Despite this, even during difficult periods, Monica continued her work and continued to come to the office. To help, Asfaldo usually drove his wife, but he was not always able to do so as he worked as a manager in another department. Their working hours varied slightly. Sometimes Monica enlisted the help of relatives and colleagues when she was unable to drive. Due to severe pain, which could interfere with her full mobility, she took painkillers prescribed by doctors for years. This helped manage the pain, but it caused a host of side effects. In particular, the woman's weight began to increase noticeably during the early stages of treatment. To address this, doctors tried to balance the medication dosage, but this was not easy. Even with all these problems, Monica continued to work. However, it was not so much her work that worried her, but her family life. The disease affected more than just her career. Monica and Asfalda had been together for just under 15 years. During this time, the couple tried to have children. However, due to the illness, constant pain, and excess weight, the woman was unable to conceive. Finally, in the late 1990s, after several years of consultations, doctors conducted an examination that showed the treatment was producing better results than before. Apparently, the dosage had been correctly adjusted. The treating specialist even encouraged Monica by saying she now had a chance of having a child. This had always been a pressing issue for the couple. Both desperately wanted children, but some experts believed the woman would never be able to conceive. So when, 4 years after actively battling her illness, Monica learned she was pregnant, it was a true victory. By this point, she had almost overcome the effects of her illness. Having given birth to a daughter, she longed for more children, just like her husband. Growing up in a large family, she was accustomed to children's laughter and joy. Many believed the girl would be the couple's only child, but they were mistaken. 4 years later, Monica became pregnant again, this time giving birth to a boy. Her delicate condition became known in 2004, and in mid-2005, a son was born. Now she focused on her children. She had 6 months of maternity leave at home. Despite her love for work, Monica happily used this time to care for her son and daughter. However, this was not a problem. Other women simply temporarily filled in for her valuable employee. By the end of December of that year, her maternity leave was ending. Monica was about to return to work and reintegrate into her normal work routine and team. Since her children were still young, her parents, who lived nearby, helped her with childcare for their grandson and granddaughter. She had to start her shift on December 28, 2005. Osvaldo couldn't give his wife a ride to work because he had to leave early to go to the car wash. Her parents offered her a ride in their car, but she didn't want to bother anyone, as getting to the company was easy. Monica's company had launched a company bus that picked up employees from all over the suburbs. Monica wanted to take advantage of this opportunity because she could socialize with colleagues on the way to the company. At 6:30 a.m. on December 28, 2005, Monica left her home and headed toward the bus stop located in the Ponta do Praia Santas area. She made it there without any problems, sat down on a bench, and waited for transport. But she was not destined to make it to the office. About 15 minutes after she left her home, several witnesses contacted the local police station, reporting a shooting near the Ponta do Praia bus stop. When police arrived, they found Monica. She was still alive, but unconscious. Witnesses immediately reported that Monica was simply sitting on a bench when a white car drove past her. It drove up to her at high speed and suddenly stopped in front of the bus stop. Before she could react, several shots rang out from the back seat. The attack left the victim with 5 gunshot wounds. Monica suffered very serious injuries and was desperately fighting for her life. Thanks to this, she was taken to the Givoy Medical Center. Here in the emergency room, the doctors made every effort to save her while Asphalt was told what had happened. The man was certain it was some kind of misunderstanding. His wife couldn't have been shot. Confused, he immediately went to the hospital to find out everything. The police, meanwhile, hoped that everything would be all right, that Monica would survive, and that they could talk to her and have her reveal who had carried out the attack. Their hopes for survival were dashed. Monica didn't survive long enough for her husband to arrive. She died without regaining consciousness. The first person the police spoke to from the deceased woman's inner circle was her husband. He didn't arouse suspicion and provided an alibi. However, he also had no valuable information. The man had no reason to want his wife dead. He said she had no known enemies or ill-wishers. She hadn't had any conflicts with anyone, especially in the last 6 months, while she was focused on her child and didn't even leave the house very often. Investigations confirmed the asphalt's description. The police were unable to find any extramarital affairs between either spouse. Monica had received no threats. She had no encounters with anyone, not only in real life, but also online. The police had virtually no evidence. The only thing all the witnesses reported was a white car driving past a bus stop and slowing down, as if deliberately intending to shoot Monica. It all happened so quickly that the witnesses had a hard time seeing what happened. Some couldn't even agree on whether the driver was a man or a woman. However, curious facts began to emerge when word of the woman's murder reached her colleagues. One of the women, a clerk at the same company where Monica worked, commented on the incident. This woman's name was Renata Barelli. A relative told police that several weeks before Monica's shooting, Renata had experienced a similar attack. The only connection between the two victims was their shared workplace. They socialized as co-workers, but weren't close friends. Renata was covering Monica's duties during her maternity leave. It seemed like it could all have been a coincidence, but the coincidences between the incidents seemed too numerous. Fortunately, Renata survived the attack, so detectives wanted to speak with her. The woman eagerly described a roadside shooting that occurred on November 18 of that year. Similarly, she had been simply heading from home to work, but unlike Monica, she was driving her own car. She had a few kilometers to go to work, but as she was stopped at a traffic light, a car pulled up next to her and began firing gunshots. She miraculously managed to react and duck, but this didn't save her from injuries. Several bullets grazed her shoulder and arm. Fortunately, no vital organs were damaged. The woman received prompt medical attention, but was unable to provide any valuable information to the police. The attackers' faces were hidden, but the incident didn't end with the gunshot. After Renata survived the shooting, she began receiving threatening calls. The unknown caller claimed she shouldn't return to work. Investigators wanted to get to the bottom of the matter and contacted colleagues who had been investigating Renata's attack. Although the caller had been from an unknown number, they had left digital traces. Detecting the encrypted signal wasn't easy and took quite a while. While cybersecurity personnel were searching, detectives learned that there had been another victim at the company where Monica worked. She turned out to be Maria Aparecida de Campas, the wife of the boss of the same organization. In September 2005, the woman contacted the police after narrowly escaping a kidnapping. Strangers pulled up next to her in a car as she was returning home from work. Both were provocative and tried to coax her into their car. When Maria refused, they attacked her and attempted to force her into the car. Fortunately, she managed to break free. She screamed, resisted, and managed to escape. The kidnappers acted quickly and immediately fled the scene, flying. However, Maria managed to capture a short video. The recording partially captured the car's license plate. Now any doubts about the connected attacks disappeared. There was clearly a connection. The police were certain that 3 attacks on women in such a short period of time, all targeting employees of the same company, could not have been random. The clues kept coming. Soon investigators were able to track down the man who had threatened Renata over the phone. Tracking led to a man named Rodrigo Queiroz dos Santos. He was immediately detained and questioned. At first, the man denied everything, but it quickly became apparent the situation was serious and the detectives had evidence, so he decided to cooperate. Rodrigo confessed to participating in all 3 crimes and also spoke about the other people he had committed them with. Surprisingly, the mastermind behind both shootings and kidnapping attempts turned out to be a woman. This was his cousin, Carolina dos Santos, who was 23 years old at the time. Less than a month had passed since Monica's death when, on the morning of January 20, 2006, police arrested the alleged mastermind behind the series of assassination attempts. Carolina was at her home in Cubatao at the time. She was a former intern at the same oil company where the victims worked. Moreover, Carolina and her cousin did not act alone. That same day, another accomplice, Anderson Oliveira, Matias, was arrested. And the next day, Evandra da Silva Santos appeared at the station for questioning. At first, Carolina denied any involvement in the crimes and preferred to remain silent rather than cooperate with the investigation. But the longer she resisted, the more she began to break down. Eventually, she admitted her involvement in the crimes and began to explain why it all happened. The only problem was the lack of a lawyer at that point. By 2005, Carolina was an ordinary resident of Cubatao. She was 23 years old, married and finishing her studies. Carolina wanted to earn a degree in business administration. As part of her studies, she had to complete an internship. At this stage, her greatest dream was to find a high-paying job and build a career. Local oil companies seemed very promising for her. Thanks to her specialty, she was able to secure an internship at the company where Monica and the other victims worked. The new intern arrived in December 2004. Carolina, however, was well aware that this job was only temporary as Monica held the position she coveted. However, the woman soon went on maternity leave, so her position was filled by other company employees. During Carolina's tenure, no conflicts or disciplinary issues were observed in the office. On the contrary, both management and colleagues saw her as a dedicated intern interested in professional growth. Carolina initially worked alongside Monica, who oversaw the process and trained the young employee. Their collaboration lasted several months, during which time she became thoroughly familiar with the responsibilities and daily routines of all employees. When 42-year-old Monica went on maternity leave, Carolina filled in for her. This, too, was a temporary position, as the internship was ending. Remarkably, the relationship between her and Monica remained friendly until the very end. She even once visited her former colleague at home. They chatted. The happy mother showed off her newborn son, unaware of the plan brewing in the student's mind. Monica's maternity leave was gradually coming to an end, as was Carolina's internship at the company. She began to worry about her position. She spoke with colleagues and management, wanting to find out how she could stay and become a permanent employee. Everyone understood perfectly well that she was working a high-paying job where resignations were commonplace as. Therefore, Carolina didn't expect anyone to quit for her so she could take their place. One employee even jokingly remarked that the vacancy could only be filled by killing someone, and Carolina took this innocent joke too literally. However, attempts to secure a permanent position were made repeatedly. During her internship, she began a romantic relationship with one of the company's managers, a 42-year-old man named Eliseo. He was married to Maria Aracida. As it later turned out, Carolina deliberately began the relationship with this man in the hopes of exploiting his status and securing a permanent position after the internship ended. Eliseo himself admitted to a relationship with a student but claimed he never took it seriously. Therefore, as soon as he feared his wife would find out, Eliseo ended the affair on his own initiative. In July 2005, his decision deeply upset Carolina. She lost her only hope of holding on to her chosen position. Her internship ended at the end of the summer. She still desperately wanted a position with the company. It reached the level of obsession. Her dreams were dashed when the recruiting department dispassionately informed her that she would be notified if a vacancy arose. Having lost her last connection with her chosen organization through Eliseo, Carolina decided to take more drastic action. She recalled a colleague's careless joke and chose Maria as her first victim. Carolina assumed that if Eliseo's wife died, he would not refuse to build a relationship with her, and that would be her ticket to her dream job. Unable to commit the crime herself, Carolina turned to her cousin, Rodrigo. He recruited other men. Ivandro was merely supposed to drive the car, and in exchange for his assistance, he was promised a hefty top-up on his mobile phone. On September 6, 2005, Maria was calmly walking down the street in the evening when two men pulled up next to her in a car. They attempted to kidnap her, but retreated. Maria was lucky only because she resisted, managed to escape their grasp, and attracted the attention of passers-by. However, despite this setback, Carolina was ambitious and persistent enough not to give up. Several months passed when she decided to remove another obstacle to her career success. This time she wanted to deal with Renata. Initially, she tried to poison her by slipping poison into her coffee at work. But the plan failed. Renata survived. Carolina then armed herself with a pistol provided by one of her accomplices and intended to shoot Renata. She also used another car belonging to her family members. Renata was easily identified because Carolina perfectly remembered the daily routines of all the company employees she had encountered during her internship. Stopping at a traffic light, one of the criminals opened fire, but this time, too, the gang was unsuccessful. Renata was wounded but survived. Carolina then decided to exert psychological pressure on her, stalking her and making threatening phone calls, having persuaded her brother to do the same. At the same time, she realized she wasn't tackling the main problem, the main problem. The fact was that both Renata and Maria were simply filling in for Monica during her maternity leave. Even if she eliminated both women, she wouldn't have freed up the position or been able to deal with the man who held the coveted position at the oil company. Some sources claim that Renata soon returned to work despite the assassination attempts and threats. Others insisted the woman had been granted temporary leave during the investigation. In any case, Carolina had selected a new victim and was now focusing on Monica, who had less than a month left on maternity leave. On December 28th, Carolina got behind the wheel of a car. She had always changed cars during her previous attacks to complicate the search. This time, it was a white car. She and her accomplices drove to the victim's house and parked nearby. She hadn't expected the woman to take the bus, but that made the task even easier. This time, the attack was successful. The criminal was now exploring options for returning to the oil company. Despite this and all previous attempts, Carolina claimed she hadn't planned to kill Monica. She wanted to scare her into voluntarily leaving her position at the company. Then she would have a chance to get her job back. In any case, the investigators didn't believe this story. At least because Monica had received 5 gunshot wounds and Renata's car was riddled with bullets. This was inconsistent with involuntary action and a simple attempt to intimidate. Furthermore, detectives observed no emotion or signs of remorse in Carolina. It seemed she had carefully prepared and simply knew what and how to say to mitigate her guilt. However, other difficulties quickly arose. Carolina confessed without a lawyer present. Shortly thereafter, a defense attorney arrived at the police station. The girl spoke with him briefly, after which she retracted her confession and began denying involvement in the crimes. The lawyer attempted to challenge the girl's confession, claiming it had been coerced by the police. Now, to convict the girl, physical evidence was needed. Months of investigation ensued, during which dozens of forensic examinations were conducted, including analysis of telephone and computer data. This allowed the conclusion to be reached beyond a reasonable doubt that Carolina was the organizer of a series of crimes that occurred from September to December 2005. The roles of the accomplices also became clear. Formal charges were brought against Carolina and her accomplices in February 2006, and the trial began in August 2007. According to prosecutors, Carolina decided to commit the massacre because she became obsessed with the idea that it was her only chance of securing a permanent job at her favorite company. Her decision to shed blood was impulsive and emotional. It was likely also connected to the abrupt breakup with Alicio. The girl's defense attorney continued to insist on her chosen version of events. The attorney claimed that the confession was coerced and also tried to convince the jury that Carolina was a random victim who was being blamed due to the high-profile nature of the incident. The defense attorney believed that Carolina had nothing to do with the attacks, a theory she also maintained. Despite this, after analyzing all the evidence, the jury found Carolina guilty. She was sentenced to 30 years in prison, and then a trial was held with the remaining accomplices. Rodrigo Dosacion received a 16-year prison sentence. It was proven that he was searching for other members of the group. Anderson de Oliveira Matias was sentenced to 14 years. He was identified as the shooter who killed Monica and wounded Renata. Evandra do Silva Santos was sentenced to 14 years in prison for aiding in contacting the killers and providing a firearm. After the ruling, Carolina's lawyer filed an appeal. However, in March 2009, after a series of reviews, the decision was made to uphold the sentence. As of now, the criminal has served more than half of her sentence. She is expected to be released in 2036. After the death of his beloved wife, Oswaldo suffered greatly from the tragedy. He was forced to fully raise their 2 children. It took years to come to terms with the loss. Despite the consequences, he managed to remarry. His new wife accepted Monica's children as her own. The series of assassination attempts that the young woman orchestrated to secure a job is still used in Brazilian legal and criminological practice. This story is told as an example of the extreme form of corporate psychopathy. This story leaves a heavy aftertaste. Monica Tammer was not a major businesswoman, did not cross the mafia, and did not keep other people's secrets. She was simply a mother who woke up early every day to hug her baby and then simply went to work. Her life was cut short not by a fatal accident, but because someone's icy, twisted pride valued human breath at the cost of a standard office salary. Carolina received her 30 years in prison, but no sentence will return a mother to a child or a beloved woman to a husband. The most terrible thing about this tragedy is the realization of how precarious our security can be. We're used to looking for threats in dark alleys, but sometimes the most dangerous enemy is sitting at the next desk, smiling when we meet and pouring us our morning coffee. Take a look around you at work and school. It seems like we know the people we spend 8 hours a day with. But have you ever wondered what the person sitting right across from you is truly capable of when what they want most in the world is at stake? If you enjoyed my work, subscribe to the channel and give this video a like. Let's discuss this story in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe to my Telegram channel where I publish interesting crime news daily. The link will be in the video description. Thank you all and bye.